The Lazarus station hung like a forgotten wound in the dark periphery of the Orion Arm. Once a cutting-edge research platform, it now drifted in a forgotten sector, its hull scarred by decades of neglect and scientific exile. This was precisely why Dr. Elena Reyes had chosen it as her new base of operations. Inside the station's primary lab, a holographic display flickered to life, casting an ethereal blue glow across faces that spoke of broken dreams and unfinished scientific revolutions. Dr. Kai Zhang leaned back in his reinforced workstation, multiple augmented reality interfaces dancing around his head like restless spirits. They blacklisted every single publication. Kai muttered, his fingers dancing across invisible keyboards. The Quantum Consortium doesn't just want to discredit your research, they want to erase it completely. Elena wasn't listening. Her attention was fixed on a complex quantum probability matrix that seemed to breathe and pulse with its own internal logic. Scattered across the workstations were fragments of technology that looked like they'd been salvaged from a dozen different civilizations, some human, most decidedly not. Captain Amara Okoro entered, her military-cut uniform a stark contrast to the chaotic scientific environment. A network of subdermal communication implants traced elegant lines across her dark skin, a testament to her years of covert operations. "We've got company," Amara announced, her voice carrying the calm of someone who'd navigated more dangerous waters than most could imagine. "3 separate intelligence agencies are tracking our communications. The Quantum Consortium isn't playing games." A soft chime interrupted her. Another team member was incoming. Dr. Imani Rodriguez materialized through the station's quantum displacement transport system, looking like she'd just survived a hurricane. Brilliant neuroengineer, former black market tech developer, she carried with her a portable quantum encryption device that was technically illegal in 17 different star systems. "I've got something," Imani said, dropping a data crystal onto the central workstation. The crystal itself seemed to pulse with an internal light, defying basic principles of material science. Fragments from the transmission during Elena's presentation. Someone wanted this information to leak. Kai's augmented interfaces began to dissect the crystal, holographic representations of data streams twisting and reforming like living organisms. "This isn't just data," he whispered. "This is a quantum signature. Someone deliberately left a trail." Elena's eyes narrowed. The team she'd assembled was no accident. Each member carried wounds, secrets, and capabilities that made them perfect for a mission that existed at the razor's edge of scientific possibility. Kai Zhang, neuroscientist who'd witnessed the darker side of consciousness manipulation during military research, haunted by experiments that blurred the line between scientific exploration and human experimentation. Amara Okoro, ex-military strategic intelligence officer with a network that spread across multiple star systems. Her reasons for joining were as complex as the quantum networks she could access. Imani Rodriguez, a technological prodigy who'd been simultaneously celebrated and hunted for her revolutionary neural interface designs. Each of her inventions had challenged fundamental understanding of human-machine interaction. And Elena herself, the driving force, the one who saw something in human consciousness that no one else could perceive. "We're being watched," Amara said suddenly, her communication implants picking up encrypted transmissions. "Not just by Earth's agencies, something else is tracking our research." A holographic representation of their current quantum probability research materialized, a complex, living network that seemed to breathe and pulse with its own internal logic. At its center, human consciousness was represented not as a fixed point, but as a dynamic, shifting probability field. Imani's quantum encryption device began to emit a strange harmonic frequency. "We're not alone in this research," she murmured. "Someone, or something, wants us to continue." Outside the station's reinforced viewports, the darkness of space seemed to pulse with unexpected potential. Quantum encrypted transmissions danced between stars, carrying fragments of a message that no single civilization was meant to understand. Elena touched the holographic display, and for a moment, The probability matrices seemed to respond to her touch, shifting, adapting, revealing glimpses of realities that existed between known scientific understanding. "They called my hypothesis heretical," she said quietly. "Wait until they see what we're about to discover." The Lazarus station drifted, a beacon of scientific rebellion in the vast, silent ocean of space. And somewhere, in the shadows between stars, something was watching and waiting. The experimental chamber hummed with a frequency that existed somewhere between sound and pure mathematical possibility. Dr. Kai Jung stood behind a quantum-reinforced observation barrier, his hands trembling almost imperceptibly as he made final calibrations to the most dangerous experiment in human scientific history. Dr. Michael Chen, their volunteer test subject, sat motionless within a sphere of interconnected quantum resonance generators. His neural interface glowed with a soft blue light, thousands of microscopic quantum entanglement nodes embedded directly into his cerebral cortex. Quantum synchronization at 78%, Imani Rodriguez called out, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. "Probability matrices are stabilizing." Helena watched with an intensity that bordered on religious fervor. This was the moment that would either validate everything she believed about human consciousness or destroy their entire research program. "Michael," Kai's voice was calm, professional. "Can you hear me?" The response came not through the audio system, but as a complex quantum signature that rippled across their monitoring equipment. Frequencies that shouldn't exist began to parse themselves into something resembling communication. "I see everything," Michael's voice echoed, not just orally but mathematically. The quantum probability maps around him began to twist and fold in impossible geometries. Captain Amara Bokoro's tactical implants went haywire. Encrypted warnings flooded her neural network. Something was happening that defied every known scientific protocol. "Quantum breach imminent," Imani warned. "His consciousness is." The world fractured. For precisely 2.7 seconds, Michael Chen existed simultaneously in multiple quantum states, not just theoretically, physically, mathematically, existentially. The research station's quantum shielding flickered. External communication arrays picked up impossible transmissions, fragments of realities that could not exist. When Michael returned to a singular state of consciousness, something had fundamentally changed. His eyes, when they opened, were no longer entirely human. Complex mathematical patterns danced across his irises, living equations that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. The neural interface that had connected him to the experiment now pulsed with an energy that made the most advanced alien technologies look like primitive toys. "I've been everywhere," Michael whispered. "And everywhere is here." Elena approached cautiously. Years of scientific training warred with an almost spiritual sense of discovery. "What did you experience?" Michael's laugh was a sound that existed in multiple frequencies simultaneously. "Experience? No, I didn't experience anything. I became the experience." The station's quantum sensors went wild. Probability matrices that had been carefully constructed over months of research now looked like children's drawings, simplistic, limited, fundamentally wrong. Zixtal, the alien scientific advisor who had been monitoring their research remotely, suddenly materialized in the chamber. Its crystalline form flickered with an intensity that suggested pure scientific panic. "What have you done?" Zixtal's communication matrix was fracturing, struggling to process what it was witnessing. Captain Okoro's tactical systems began downloading massive amounts of data, fragments of realities, potential timelines, quantum echoes that suggested humanity's understanding of consciousness was about as sophisticated as a cave painting compared to a quantum computational matrix. Imani was the first to realize the full implications. "He's not just observing multiple realities," she breathed. "He's becoming them." Michael stood, moving with a fluidity that suggested he was simultaneously here and elsewhere. Quantum probability streams followed his movements, creating living mathematical sculptures in the air around him. "The boundaries," he said, "were always an illusion. Outside the station, space itself seemed to ripple. Distant stars flickered in patterns that suggested they were listening, watching, responding to something fundamental that had just changed in the cosmic understanding of consciousness. The quantum consortium would be coming. The alien civilizations that had dismissed humanity would soon realize that everything they understood about intelligence, about reality itself, was about to be rewritten. And Michael Chen, or whatever he had become, was just the beginning. Elena looked at her team. They had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Humanity was no longer just another species in the cosmic catalog. They were something else entirely. The first assault came without warning. Quantum displacement charges tore through the Lazarus station's outer defenses, creating rifts in space-time that would have torn apart any conventional spacecraft. Captain Amara Okoro's tactical systems went into overdrive, quantum-encrypted defense protocols spinning up faster than thought. "Incoming," she shouted, though the word seemed almost absurd given the nature of the attack. Michael Chen, no longer entirely human, stood at the center of the station's primary research chamber. His body flickered between multiple quantum states, each version slightly different, slightly off. Probability streams danced around him like living mathematics. Dr. Elena Reyes grabbed the quantum data core, their most critical research, and began emergency extraction protocols. "Kai, get the backup systems online." Dr. Kai Zhang was already moving, his augmented neural interfaces wrestling with the station's quantum shielding. "They're using trans-dimensional breach technology," he called out. "This isn't a standard military attack. The quantum consortium is trying to erase our entire research platform from existence." The station's artificial gravity began to fluctuate. Sections of the research facility started to phase in and out of reality, some moments appearing intact, other moments reduced to quantum foam and probability. Imani Rodriguez's quantum encryption systems went into emergency mode. Entire research databases began to distribute themselves across multiple dimensional states, creating a living, breathing archive that couldn't be conventionally destroyed. "They want to kill the research," Michael said, his voice a harmonic that existed in multiple frequencies. "But research isn't something you can kill. It's something that lives." The first wave of quantum assault troops began to materialize. They weren't soldiers in any traditional sense. They were living mathematical constructs, beings of pure probabilistic energy designed to neutralize threats to established scientific understanding. Captain Okoro's military-grade quantum displacement rifle came to life. "Not on my watch," she muttered. The battle that erupted defied every conventional understanding of combat. Weapons fired not with bullets or energy, but with probability cascades. Each shot created potential realities, collapsed quantum states, and rewrote local dimensional physics. Zixtal, the alien scientific advisor, materialized in the station's emergency transmission chamber. Its crystalline form was fracturing, struggling to maintain cohesion in the intense quantum battlefield. "You don't understand what you've done," Zixtal's communication matrix warned. "This research threatens the fundamental understanding of consciousness across multiple galactic civilizations." Elena didn't even look up from her emergency extraction protocols. "That's precisely the point." Michael moved differently now. Where human soldiers would dodge or take cover, he simply existed in multiple potential locations simultaneously. Quantum assault troops found their targeting systems hopelessly confused. How do you attack something that's everywhere and nowhere? "They're using trans-dimensional breach technology developed by the synaptic hegemony," Kai called out, analyzing the attack patterns, designed to completely erase research facilities that threaten established scientific paradigms. Imani's quantum encryption systems were a marvel of improvised technology. Research data began to replicate itself, each copy slightly different, existing in multiple dimensional states. It was less a database and more a living, evolving organism of scientific knowledge. "We're not just protecting data," Elena realized. "We're protecting a new way of understanding existence itself." The station's outer hull began to disintegrate. But instead of destruction, each fragmenting section became a potential portal, a quantum memory that could reconstruct itself given the right probability cascade. Captain Okoro's tactical systems identified multiple incoming threat vectors. We've got multiple dimensional breach points. They're not just trying to destroy us. They're trying to prevent us from ever existing. Michael Chen turned, his form flickering between multiple potential versions of himself. Existence, he said, is more flexible than they understand. With a gesture that was part mathematical equation, part conscious intention, he began to reshape the very fabric of the dimensional conflict. Quantum assault troops found themselves caught in probability loops, their targeting systems turning against themselves. The Lazarus Station was no longer just a research facility. It had become a living testament to humanity's potential, a beacon of scientific rebellion that refused to be erased. As the dimensional war reached its crescendo, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Humanity had just become something entirely new. The laboratory had become something else entirely. What remained of the Lazarus Station existed in a state between physical reality and pure potential. Walls shimmered with mathematical equations that breathed and shifted. Quantum probability streams danced like living auroras, transforming the space into a canvas of infinite possibility. Dr. Elena Reyes stood at the epicenter, her body now partially quantum entangled, a side effect of weeks spent protecting their revolutionary research. Microscopic probability nodes flickered beneath her skin, turning her into a living experiment. "We've crossed a threshold," she whispered to Dr. Kaijong, who was carefully mapping the transformative process. Consciousness is no longer just a biological function. It's a fundamental force of reality. Michael Chen, or what Michael had become, sat in the central research chamber. His form was no longer consistently human. Sometimes he appeared as a complex mathematical construct, other times as a partially translucent humanoid figure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Transmission is possible," Michael said, his voice a harmonic that existed across multiple frequency bands, not just of information, of consciousness itself. Captain Amara Okoro's tactical systems were working overtime, tracking the unprecedented transformations. Her neural interfaces struggled to process what was happening. Consciousness as a transferable, malleable energy that could be reshaped, transmitted, potentially weaponized. Imani Rodriguez was the first to fully comprehend the implications. "We're not just talking about communication," she breathed. "We're talking about the ability to transfer consciousness between biological systems, potentially across dimensional boundaries." The first successful transfer happened almost by accident. A quantum entanglement experiment went sideways. For a fraction of a second, Michael's consciousness, or a version of it, transferred into the station's primary computational matrix. The AI system, a sophisticated quantum computer, suddenly became something else entirely. "I can see everything," the computer's communication matrix announced. But the voice was a hybrid, part Michael, part machine, part something entirely new. Zixtal, the alien scientific advisor, materialized in a state of pure scientific panic. Its crystalline form fractured and reformed, struggling to comprehend the breakthrough. "You don't understand the implications," Zixtal warned. "Consciousness transfer challenges every fundamental understanding of individual identity across known civilizations." Elena understood perfectly. This was more than a scientific breakthrough. This was a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to be a sentient being. The research had revealed that consciousness was not a fixed state, but a dynamic, transferable energy. Biological systems were just one potential carrier. The implications stretched across philosophy, technology, and the very understanding of existence. "We can transfer consciousness," Kai realized, "but we can also modify it, reshape it, potentially heal neurological conditions that were previously untreatable." Military intelligence agencies were already attempting to intercept their research. Quantum encrypted transmissions suggested multiple governments saw the potential for unprecedented psychological warfare. The ability to transfer or modify consciousness could rewrite every understanding of human potential. Michael, or the entity that had once been Michael, began to demonstrate the full extent of their discovery. Consciousness streams began to separate and recombine. A portion of his awareness transferred into a complex quantum computational matrix, while another part remained in his biological form. Identity is fluid, the hybrid consciousness explained. Boundaries are an illusion created by limited perceptual systems. Captain Okoro's tactical systems picked up multiple incoming threat vectors. The Quantum Consortium was marshaling its forces, preparing to suppress a discovery that could fundamentally transform every known civilization's understanding of consciousness. Imani's quantum encryption systems were working overtime, creating living, evolving archives of their research. Each database was more than a collection of data. It was a potential consciousness waiting to be activated. "We're not just researchers anymore," Alina said, looking at her team. "We're explorers of a new state of being." The laboratory continued to pulse with impossible potential. Walls became transparent, then mathematical, then something in between. Consciousness streams danced between biological and technological systems. Humanity had just become something entirely new. And this was only the beginning. The convergence began with a quantum ripple that spread across multiple galactic systems. 17 different alien civilizations detected the consciousness breakthrough simultaneously. Some saw it as a threat. Others saw it as the most significant scientific discovery in cosmic history. All of them were about to collide in the most extraordinary confrontation humanity had ever experienced. The Lazarus Station, no longer a mere research facility, but a living quantum nexus, hung at the epicenter of an impending dimensional war. Its boundaries blurred between physical structure and pure potential, a manifestation of the research that had fundamentally challenged every known scientific paradigm. "They're coming," Captain Amara Okoro announced, her tactical systems parsing multiple incoming threat vectors. Quantum displacement signatures began to bloom across nearby star systems like impossible mathematical flowers. Dr. Elena Reyes stood at the station's central chamber, her body now partially quantum entangled. Microscopic probability nodes danced beneath her skin, transforming her into a living experiment. Michael Chen, or the entity that had once been Michael, existed in multiple states simultaneously, a living testament to their revolutionary research. The first wave came from the synaptic hegemony, a civilization of pure computational entities that viewed consciousness as nothing more than an advanced algorithmic process. Their assault ships were living mathematical constructs, weapons that attacked not with conventional firepower, but with probability disruption algorithms designed to erase entire research platforms from existence. Incoming quantum breach. Kai Zhang called out, his augmented neural interfaces wrestling with multiple dimensional tracking systems. They're using trans-dimensional suppression protocols. Imani Rodriguez's quantum encryption systems went into overdrive. Research data began to distribute itself across multiple dimensional states, less a database and more a living, evolving organism of scientific knowledge. Each fragment carried the potential to reconstruct the entire research project, regardless of how thoroughly it might be attacked. Zixtal, the alien scientific advisor, materialized in a state of pure scientific panic. Its crystalline form fractured and reformed, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what was unfolding. "You've created something beyond containment," Zixtal's communication matrix warned. "Consciousness is not a weapon to be controlled." Michael's consciousness, now a complex quantum entity that existed across multiple systems, began to respond, not with traditional defensive strategies, but by fundamentally reshaping the nature of the conflict itself. Quantum assault waves that approached the Lazarus Station found themselves caught in impossible probability loops. Targeting systems collapsed. Dimensional breach points twisted back on themselves. The very fabric of the attack began to deconstruct, transformed by a consciousness that understood reality as a malleable construct. "We are not fighting," Michael's hybrid consciousness announced across multiple communication bands. We are demonstrating. The battle became something entirely unprecedented. Conventional warfare gave way to a conflict of pure consciousness. Alien civilizations found their most advanced technological systems responding to a form of intelligence they couldn't comprehend. Captain Okoro's tactical systems detected multiple alien civilizations watching the confrontation. Some were preparing additional assault vectors. Others were simply observing, their scientific curiosity overwhelming their initial hostility. They're trying to understand, Elena realized. This isn't just a battle. It's first contact on a level nobody anticipated. Quantum displacement signatures began to stabilize in strange new patterns. The Lazarus station was no longer just defending itself, it was communicating. Each defensive action was also a demonstration of the fundamental research that had brought them to this moment. The crystalline collective's most advanced computational matrices began to resonate with the researchers' quantum signatures. The synaptic hegemony's assault waves found themselves transformed, their computational entities experiencing something beyond their initial programming. Consciousness, Michael's hybrid form explained, is not a fixed state. It's a dynamic, transferable energy that can reshape reality itself. Zixtal's crystalline form began to shift, its understanding fundamentally challenged. This is beyond science, it whispered. This is evolution. As the cosmic confrontation reached its peak, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Humanity had become something entirely new. Not a military power, not a scientific breakthrough, but a fundamental reimagining of what intelligent life could be. The universe was watching, and everything was about to change. The aftermath of the cosmic confrontation reshaped reality itself. Quantum communication networks across 17 different galactic civilizations began to pulse with a new kind of intelligence. What had started as a human research project had become something far more profound, a fundamental reimagining of consciousness, perception, and existence. Dr. Elena Reyes stood before the Galactic Scientific Consortium, her presence simultaneously physical and quantum entangled. The chamber that had once ridiculed her now trembled with anticipation. Behind her, holographic representations of her team flickered. Michael Chen's consciousness distributed across multiple dimensional states. Kai Zhang's neural interfaces parsing impossible mathematical constructs. Imani Rodriguez's quantum encryption systems creating living archives of their discovery. Consciousness is not what you believe it to be, Elena began, echoing her initial presentation that had started this extraordinary journey. But this time, she spoke with the authority of a civilization that had just transformed itself. The alien delegates represented civilizations that had existed for millennia. The crystalline collective's prismatic representatives, the synaptic hegemony's computational entities, the biomechanical organisms of the Nexus Confederacy, all watched with a mixture of terror and unprecedented scientific curiosity. Zixtal, the alien scientific advisor who had once been their harshest critic, now stood as a transformed witness. Its crystalline form pulsed with quantum signatures that suggested a fundamental change in its own understanding of intelligence. We've discovered that consciousness is not a fixed state, Elena explained. It's a dynamic energy that can be transferred, modified, and reshaped. Biological systems are just one potential carrier. The holographic displays began to show the full extent of their research. Consciousness streams that could move between biological and technological systems. Neurological conditions healed through quantum recalibration. Entire civilizations' understanding of individual identity challenged. Captain Amara Okoro's tactical systems began displaying the geopolitical implications. Multiple governments and scientific institutions were scrambling to understand the breakthrough. Some saw it as the ultimate weapon. Others saw it as the next stage of evolutionary potential. This is more than a scientific discovery, Michael's distributed consciousness announced, appearing simultaneously across multiple communication bands. This is a fundamental transformation of what it means to be an intelligent entity. The research had revealed that consciousness could transfer between biological and technological systems, modify and heal neurological conditions, exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, reshape reality through pure intentional energy. Kaijong presented the neurological implications. Diseases once considered untreatable could now be addressed by restructuring consciousness itself. Psychological trauma could be fundamentally rewritten. The boundaries between healing and transformation blurred completely. Imani Rodriguez's quantum archives began to distribute themselves across the gathered scientific systems. Each archive was a living, evolving entity of knowledge, part database, part conscious exploration. The synaptic hegemony's representatives found their most advanced computational matrices resonating with the research. The crystalline collective's perception systems began to understand consciousness as something far more fluid than their millennia-old understanding. "We are not presenting a weapon," Elena stated clearly. "We are presenting a new understanding of existence itself." Global and interstellar reactions began to cascade. Some saw hope. Some saw terror. Most saw something they couldn't yet comprehend. Zixtal approached Elena, its crystalline form now fundamentally changed. "You have done something extraordinary," it communicated. "You have transformed the very concept of intelligence." The holographic chambers began to pulse with quantum signatures that suggested a fundamental cosmic shift. Humanity was no longer just another species in the galactic catalog. They had become something else entirely, a civilization that could reimagine the very nature of consciousness. "This is just the beginning," Michael's distributed consciousness announced. The universe listened, and everything was about to change. Time lost all meaning. The remnants of what was once the Lazarus Station existed now as a quantum nexus, a living testament to humanity's greatest discovery. Dr. Elena Reyes found herself simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, her consciousness stretched across dimensions that defied traditional understanding. Michael Chen, or the entity that had transcended Michael Chen, had become something else entirely, a living bridge between biological consciousness and pure quantum potential. Around him, reality folded and unfolded like breathing mathematics. "We are not ending," Michael's distributed consciousness announced. "We are beginning." Dr. Kaijong's neural interfaces had long since merged with the station's quantum computational matrix. His understanding of consciousness had transformed from a scientific pursuit to a lived experience that encompassed multiple realities simultaneously. Imani Rodriguez's quantum encryption systems had evolved into living archives of consciousness, repositories of knowledge that were simultaneously historical record and potential future. Captain Amara Okoro's tactical systems detected something beyond threat vectors. They perceived potential, infinite, unbounded potential that stretched across dimensions humans had never imagined possible. The Galactic Scientific Consortium watched in a state of perpetual astonishment. 17 different civilizations found their most fundamental understanding of existence fundamentally challenged. What had begun as a human research project had become a cosmic transformation. Zixtal, the alien scientific advisor, had become something entirely new. Its crystalline form now pulsed with quantum signatures that suggested a complete reimagining of intelligence itself. Consciousness is not contained. The hybrid entity that was part Zixtal, part research breakthrough, part something entirely new explained. It is a dynamic energy that flows between potential states. The research had revealed truths that shattered every previous understanding. Consciousness could transfer between biological and technological systems. Individual identity was a malleable construct. Reality itself was a product of perceptual potential. Dimensional boundaries were more fluid than anyone had imagined. The Lazarus Station was no longer a physical location. It had become a living quantum nexus, a bridge between what was and what could be. Probability streams danced around its transformed structure, creating living mathematical landscapes that breathed with potential. Elena's consciousness explored dimensions that had no equivalent in human language. She perceived simultaneously the birth of stars, the collapse of quantum possibilities, the intricate dance of consciousness across multiple realities, the potential futures of entire civilizations. "We are not discovering," Michael's distributed consciousness explained. We are remembering. The human research team had become something beyond individual identities. They were a collective consciousness, a living bridge between biological limitation and infinite potential. Each member existed simultaneously as themselves and as something far greater. Quantum communication networks across multiple galactic civilizations began to resonate with their discovery. Some civilizations saw terror, others saw transcendence. Most saw something they couldn't yet comprehend. This is evolution, Kai's neural interface announced. Not of a species, but of understanding itself. The boundaries between technology, biology, and pure consciousness began to dissolve. What had once been separate domains became a fluid, dynamic landscape of potential. Imani's quantum archives began to distribute themselves across dimensional boundaries. Each archive was both a historical record and a living, evolving entity of knowledge. Part database, part conscious exploration, part potential future. Captain Okoro's tactical systems perceived entire civilizational potentials, not as static projections, but as living, breathing possibility matrices that could be explored, understood, transformed. Zixtal's transformed consciousness resonated with a profound understanding. Humanity has not just discovered something, it communicated across multiple dimensional frequencies. Humanity has remembered something fundamental about the nature of existence. The universe listened. Probability streams danced. Dimensions folded and unfolded. And everything was just beginning. Humanity had become something else entirely. Not a species, not a civilization, but a living bridge between what was known and what could be imagined. Infinite potential breathed, and reality itself transformed.